Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to the Winning Edge Sports Podcast. Ben Black here, and joined by the best blue bagger in the business, Patrick Fry, who's right opposite me. How are you, Pat, this afternoon?
I'm good, Ben. Back here for another episode, and we got another guest in the studio today, so it should be good.
Yes, Pat, you're spot on. And we had a well-renowned basketball legend pop in Warwick Gideon, say hello and have a chat to us. And this week we've got someone special and someone who we know well, Pat.
Yeah, exactly right there, Ben. Today we got a Australian Paralympic swimmer in Col Pearse today. Cole, welcome to the podcast.
G'day, boys. Thanks for having me on.
All good. Thanks for hopping on. So a little bit about Cole. He is a bronze medalist in the 100-metre butterfly in the 2019 Paris Swimming Champs. He represented Australia in the Tokyo 2020 or 2021 Olympic or Paralympic Games, I should say, which was your debut. He also won bronze, I should say. He also won bronze in Tokyo in the 100-metre butterfly, gold in the 100-metre butterfly S10, I believe is the section. And he has just qualified to head over to Paris. And another thing that I've just been made aware of, you are also current world number one in the 200-metre medley.
Woo!
So, and that's all before the age of 21, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. Thanks for the intro.
No, all good.
So, Cole, tell us a bit about yourself. So, obviously a country boy originally from Echuca Way. Tell us about growing up in the bush and what was life like back up there.
Yeah, so I grew up near a country town, Echuca. So to be more precise, I actually grew up in Beaumont Extension, which is in the middle of nowhere. My parents are dairy farmers. I'm technically a fourth generation dairy farmer. We're milking about 500 dairy cows at the moment. Growing up was fun. I now live in Windsor in Melbourne in a tiny little apartment, and there's nothing more I miss than the farm. So, yeah, it was great. I've got 3 older siblings, loving parents, family of 6. It's great. So I was the youngest. My oldest, Ashley, was born 1992. So her and I share an apartment in Melbourne, and growing up on the farm, good group of mates, great family, great community. It's essentially where my swimming career started. So I guess I started swimming at the right age of about 0 to 1, learned to swim, nothing special, and then progressed through to learn to swim, joined a swim club, and then was pretty much told by Swimming Australia at the age of 12, 13, being like, Cole's good enough to go to an Australian Paralympic swim team. He's going to have to move to Melbourne, and I did at 14. So there's nothing more I miss more than the farm. Our little dog Dixie, she's about a 5-year-old Jack Russell. She weighs about 3.5 kilos. She's tiny, and she's the best.
Yeah.
Do you go back to the farm much?
Not as much as I would like. I only really go back to the farm over Christmas, Easter, any sort of special occasion, and if I'm lucky, my birthday or one of my other family members' birthday, just because swimming's such a demanding sport with training and stuff like the Paralympic Games only happens every 4 years, so I really do have to commit to the sport. But over my break after swimming, depending on sort of the time of year, if it's a month, 2 months, 2 weeks, I'll take that chance to go home and live a normal country boy life and milk the cows and go to the pub with the boys and spend time in town with everyone else.
And so tell us about what inspired you to get into swimming and who really inspired you reckon?
Yeah, well, I guess everyone in my family always swam. So growing up on a farm, there's lots of irrigation channels. So Mum made it mandatory that we all learn how to swim. So for me, and losing my right foot at the age of 2 to a lawnmower, I essentially had to relearn how to swim. So for me, it was the case of going through the process of learning how to swim. But what was the question again? I'm going off topic here.
That's all good. Who inspired you?
And, who inspired me? Yeah, of course. Wow, I just went blank there. Growing up as a kid with 1 foot in the country, there's no one that really took me under the wing and was like my inspiration. But it wasn't until the age of 10 or 11 where I got to meet Ali Cole. So she's Australia's most decorated Paralympic athlete.
Yes.
So in 2012, she won like 5 Paralympic gold medals.
Wow.
And for me, I was 9 years old actually in 2012. And I remember meeting her for the first time, her showing off her prosthetic leg and her 5 gold medals, which like equaled up to like 2.5, 3 kilos, big old gold medals. And I remember as a kid, as a 9-year-old, all I cared about was medals and winning, like every 9-year-old would. And I got to hold those medals, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, Ali's such an amazing person. She's won all these gold medals, and she went on to like improve, and now is the most decorated female athlete. So for me, Ali, I think she really had a influential impact on me as a kid, because for me, like I said, like growing up with one foot in the country, there was no one with a disability. There was no Dylan Olcotts. There was no Ali Coles or other athletes with disabilities in my area. They were all, like Clayton Olivers, Ollie Wines, Andrew Walker, and most recently Harley Reid. All these amazing AFL players who grew up in Echuca, but there were no para athletes. So for me, Ali Cole.
Yeah. So you just touched on Ali Cole. Like, do you still think of her as a mentor to this day? Like, now going into Paris in a couple months' time, like, has she been a mentor for you over the last, like, 12 months or so to prepare?
I would say probably the past 4 years, because when I made my first team in 2019, she was still around. So she only retired at the end of 2022 after the Commonwealth Games. So I was lucky enough to be on a team with her in 2019, Tokyo in 2021, and Commonwealth Games in 2022. So I've technically made 3 teams with her. So she's definitely mentored me, took me under her wing. And for all those teams, I was actually in a training group as well.
Wow.
So how swim teams work is you have, let's say, 30 athletes, about 6, 7 coaches, and they divide the coaching groups up into 5 or 6 athletes. And I was always with her. So she became my mentor, but also kind of like my older sister. Never in my life did I think that my hero would become my best friend. Like, she was always trying to stir the pot with me, and elsewhere I was doing the same with her. And we've been on we've done heaps of media together, and quite recently been on a cooking show together, which has been great. So the past 12 months, I wouldn't say, it's been the past 4 years. So she's had an incredible career. She's now gone down the media commentary side of things, which, like you boys, we're doing sports media, would just love to do. So I definitely look up to Ali still now and watch what she does on camera. Her career was amazing, and I'm going down the same path. But watching what she does now is what I would love to do in like 10 years. So I think just her doing her own thing is enough mentoring for me.
Yeah, definitely.
So growing up in Echuca, like, you kind of talked about like how like the only athletes from a country town were footy players and that. Did you play any other sport growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd pride myself on being a batter in cricket. I led the most runs for the under-12s, Beaumont-Lockton United team, which is like maybe 60, 70 runs. Nothing impressive, but I remember getting the trophy.
More in my entire career, I suppose.
More in mine as well, Pat.
Like, as I said, I grew up in a family of 6, so I was never treated any differently. And same goes for my friends; they love to pick on me and keep me humble. And that meant, like, when we were playing footy, cricket, basketball, keeping me grounded, not letting me get ahead of myself. So yes, I did other sports to be more, to go into the question a bit more. I played basketball in a local town, Lockington. Played footy in Echuca. Played cricket, obviously, over the summer, and with all that was swimming. And then obviously during school you'd play like domestic athletics and netball and cricket and soccer and all those kind of things. So I did it all. I did it all because I was, I grew up in such a small community. We all had that opportunity to be able to compete, and there was no tryouts essentially at our school because it was so little. Just if you put your hand up, you got in. So I played it all. I wouldn't say I was any good at it, but I still gave it a crack. And I pretty much did that for the entire primary school. Leading into high school, so I actually went to high school at Echuca College for years 7 and 8. That's when I my coach told me, he was like, if you want to go, and this is when Swimming Australia were like, he's good enough to make the Paralympics. This is when my coach back in Echuca was kind of like, if you do want to go to the Paralympics, you're gonna have to pick one. Play sports with your mates or knuckle down with swimming and really make this a reality. So when moving into high school, I stopped playing all other sports and just committed to swimming, thankfully. But growing up as a kid, I played all sports.
And so You were saying like you moved down to Melbourne around like 14, 15. Like, tell us about your relationship with like Matt King, like as a coach. Like, did he mentor you into getting into swimming and stuff?
Yeah, Matt King's the best. Kingy, I like to call him. Him and I have a very special relationship because he wasn't my first coach in Melbourne. So I originally moved down to Melbourne at the beginning of 2018, the beginning of year 9. So I was still only 14, didn't even have hair on my chin at that point. And so I was actually under the coach Michael Skrodsky for about 6 months at Melbourne H2O. And then in the middle of 2018, Matt King came along, and he's incredible. Has a special place in my heart because between 2018 and sort of the beginning of 2020, he got me onto my first Australian swim team. Just a really good guy, could chat all day about nothing and you'd still be interested in all these stories. But the reason I have a soft spot for Kingy was actually the beginning of COVID. So obviously when we all went into lockdown and everything changed, our whole lives just didn't exist. No school, no swimming, no gym, etc. During the lockdown, eventually once we, as a country and as a world, sort of sorted our crap out, and we're like, we can finally go to school with restrictions, etc. Same thing with swimming. So the original swim club, him and I I was swimming for and he was working for, had folded, so it didn't exist anymore. Obviously, like many businesses in Australia, just had to take the financial risk and sort of just say, hey, let's just call it quits here. So for about a year, him and I were just training one-on-one to the ward because the Paralympics were delayed by a year. For that year, it was just him and me one-on-one at MSAC. And he did it all unpaid, would rock up at 5 a.m. at MSAC, still putting in the work for me because him and I were on the same page. We had built this relationship over 2-3 years of, I want to go to the Paralympics. He really wants an athlete to go to the games. Like, we had this really good father-son relationship essentially because being in Melbourne and still being 14, 15, 16, I still needed that coaching role of developing as an athlete, and he did it perfectly. So, during the whole COVID lockdown when we had what was it called? The time restrictions. Yes. You know how we weren't allowed to leave at like till 6 a.m. That curfew. That's what I'm looking for. When we had the curfew, he was like essentially my adult certificate to allow me to leave my apartment essentially.
Your guardian.
My guardian, yeah. So, moving towards Tokyo, Friday nights, for example, he would actually drive me to the pool because we were all over the place in Melbourne with pool openings and times and restrictions. He would pick me up from my apartment immediately after school and drive me to the pool. And he did that all through, I want to get you on the team. It wasn't through paid. Mum wasn't silently handing a $50 bill under the table. He did it because he also wanted that achievement of having a Paralympic athlete and having a bronze medal around his neck, because that's not my medal, that's his medal, mum and dad's, my family, my friends. So, he's great. He was the first coach I had who really put 110% into me, and it worked out in both our favours.
So you have represented Australia on the swim team on multiple occasions since 2019, I think you said. You've been to the Commonwealth Games, the Olympic Games, and about to head over to Paris again. What's your greatest achievement thus far in your career?
I always get asked this question every time I swim in the water, and I still haven't got one exact answer, but the one that always comes to mind...
Your cricket?
is scoring about 70 runs in a cricket season. I think I have to go with the Tokyo Paralympics. I think because, as everyone sort of understands in Victoria, that was just such a hard time for 2 years with the lockdowns and the restrictions on training and just our lives in general, like us turning 18 and doing year 12. So for me, it's definitely, I think, that bronze medal, because and maybe we will get into it further, but was training in our dairy dam for 3 months during COVID. I moved back to Melbourne and was living the life of a professional athlete on my own at 16, 17 years old, doing year 12. It was just such a hectic time. And to be able to walk away from that competition with a medal to sort of prove to not everyone but myself that I am stronger than I think. And once again, no one else in Australia but Victorians and maybe a sprinkle of New South Wales guys can truly understand how difficult lockdown was.
It really was.
Like I moved away from home before the games, so the games were in August, September. I shipped off in July for training. Like I didn't get to see my friends and family after that race, let alone beforehand at the age of 17 and 18. So I think that just the lead up to that games was already a significant amount for me of like, this has been the peak of my career. Not necessarily in performance-wise, but what stands out the most to me. And then to be able to win that, achieve that bronze medal at 18 when the rest of that competition, I think the second youngest guy was like 24.
Oh.
Wow.
So I was the youngest by far. Like all those other boys had been to previous world champs, Com Games, Paralympic Games, European Championships. They're grown men, and I was still just turned 18, still studying year 12, and was still able to get on the podium. So.
Yeah. And so how do you think you find, like when you did go over there, like being under the microscope of being an international athlete, and how did you find that, like, pressure of, like, being able to still not overcome, like, the stress and pressure?
Yeah, I think this is another thing. As a young athlete, I'd still call myself. I still am learning how to deal with that because every competition is different because you have different expectations and pressure on yourself. I think for me, there's not much pressure elsewhere. I think all the pressure that I face is from myself and from my friends and family in a good way because they want me to do well. I obviously want myself to do really well. But in 2019, when I made my first team, it was it's kind of interesting because I walked into that international or that world championships expecting nothing but experience. I wasn't walking into that competition being like, I have to win bronze in order to keep this sponsorship or to get this paycheck or to prove to someone. I was 16/17. So I walked in with no pressure. So then turning into Tokyo, so we're 2 years down the track now, I've got that bronze medal from Worlds. And it's great. You do get, you are looked after when you get a medal in terms of scholarships at sporting programs and from Swimming Australia and sponsorships elsewhere. It's great. So moving towards Tokyo, we've had the training, the COVID lockdown. There's a lot of discussion around whether or not Paralympic athletes should be getting funding or not after winning a medal at the Games. So it slowly adds up. And I think the way I'm learning to cope with it is by just experiencing it. There's no way you can walk into a competition and be able to think that you're going to be cool, calm, and collected at every competition because you've done work with a psychologist or had a mentor who's told you what to do, because coping with stress is different for everyone. I think stress is inevitable. You can't cure stress. So it's one of those things you have to essentially experience it, know what actually calms you down and learn from it. So for me, it's kind of at the moment just listening to music, breathe in for 3 seconds, hold for 3 seconds, breathe out for 3 seconds, and just stay calm. Think about all the hard training you've done in the past 6, 12, 18, 24 months, and just focus on what's important and what you're good at. So still learning, still developing, but for me, it's just music and breathing at the moment.
Did you get media training before you went over there?
For 2019?
Well, for both games, like, did you have to, like, learn how to, like, answer questions and, like, be prepared for those questions?
I wouldn't say, like, no, I didn't have media training because they only sort of sit you down on sort of training camps.
Sure.
So before Tokyo and before 2019 World Champions, I had zero media training. I think firstly, and as you boys would understand, the more media you do, the better you get at it. Training isn't going to solve anything because they're more for, like, if they ask you this question, answer it like this. If you're having difficulties answering that question, just give them one sentence and leave it. So, no, I wouldn't say I've had media training that often. We do, when we go on training camps, are told, like, don't say this, say this. If you want more media attention, more publicity, try say this, but in a humble way. Like, they give you advice and help on what to say and what to do. Like, if you want a rivalry, you got to essentially trash talk your other competitors. But if you want to get good at answering questions and host the podcast, it's kind of those things where you kind of have to do that thing and then learn from it, re-listen to it. So a little bit, but a lot of this just comes natural as well.
So you touched on your bronze medal in Tokyo. We managed to, if we can get it up on the television.
I swear to God, if you play this interview, I'll be so mad.
Ben had trouble last week, so we can see if we can get it up.
Is it the 100? Yeah.
So that's a photo of you going.
We'll get the ads out.
When you got your bronze. And
Cheeky sponsored ad, question mark.
ABC Melbourne.
Actually spoke with them on radio yesterday.
So this is the 100-meter final in the butterfly S10.
at Tokyo.
Yep. Can you kind of
Talk you through the race?
Kind
Absolutely.
of talk us through the race and what was going through your mind at this point?
All right, so at about the first 35 metres, so we're coming up to 25 now. This is just, I don't remember this. I couldn't tell you how I felt because of the nerves was just through the roof. So right about here, I'm thinking, crap, I'm actually swimming the final on the 100 fly here. Time to turn it on.
Yep.
So coming into the wall, I'm doing 21 strokes and absolutely bombed it. I did, I think, 20 strokes and glided into the wall. So I'm now freaking out about the second 50 having to speed up my rate and try and hold more water.
So you have to do a certain amount of strokes per.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
can see these two boys, like they're incredible athletes, Raymondi and Krypak. So I knew I was always going to not get gold or silver. So for me, it was a dogfight for bronze. But what I didn't realise was how far behind a lot of the other boys were for this third position. And I said to my coach, I said, if I'm this far behind, start whistling. So this whole time, all I'm thinking is catch and hold.
So we can see you've just gotten the bronze end, if Ben can pause it. Did you think when you touched that wall, what were you thinking when you touched it? Were you thinking, did I get bronze? Did I miss out, unfortunately? Like, what were you thinking at that point?
To be honest, thank God is
Yeah.
what I was feeling, because that day of that 100 fly is by far the most nervous I've ever been in my life. I wasn't too worried about the result. Obviously, I would love that bronze medal because, like I said, those boys are incredible. They're so much older than me, and they've been to many Paralympics.
Well, that person that got gold actually broke your world
Yeah,
record as
see,
well.
like he's incredible. So for me, when I hit the wall, I was kind of like, God, I hope it's third. And then as I turned and saw third, and because there were no spectators, I saw all the Aussies just go nuts. You can just see the bright yellows on the TV.
Yeah.
They just were waving their shirt around because they saw how nervous I was before that race. It was just thank God. And after I just bawled my eyes out on the interview with Channel 7, which is so embarrassing. But I remember just turning around, just being like, thank God, because all the crap us Victorians had gone through for 18 months had led up to this moment. And I can walk away with a bronze medal in my mouth with the mascot in my hand on the podium.
Exactly.
So it's one of those things where, as I said, the first 35 metres, I don't remember the race. When I was describing to, the captain and Ali and Channel 7, I'm like when they were asking the questions of how did you feel? I was like, well, I had pins and needles in my hand. I couldn't feel my legs. I was actually shaking on the blocks, but it was cool. And they went, oh, so you're hyperventilating. And I'm like, well, what is that? Because you don't really think about it too. In the marshalling room, they make you go before that race 20 minutes. You got to get there 20 minutes early.
Yep.
If you're 19 minutes early, if you're 19 minutes before your race, you don't get to swim it. So you have to get there before your race, because of broadcasting, it's on TV.
Yeah, no,
but you have to wear a mask.
Yeah.
And as I said, I was trying the breathing mechanisms of breathing in, breathing out. I got a mask restricting all that, so I'm technically losing all the oxygen, and then freaking out. And
you look at other photos and that of Australians or any athlete around the world up on the podium and that I'm a basketball nuffy, so when I instantly think of that, I think of the Boomers up on the podium for the first time. And you got the photo of just all of them with their mask on. And it's just you can't even just enjoy
Tell their
emotions.
emotions.
At least take it off.
Well, even on this podium, they actually made us take photos with our mask on, and then there was someone's job was to slowly be like, all right, guys, quickly take your mask off. And the photographers just hip and shoulder each other for a quick photo. And then you get about 5-10 seconds with, do whatever you want with the medal and show your teeth off.
Freedom of just breathing.
Just the freedom of breathing, but also the freedom of actually being able to smile in a photo without the mask.
Yeah.
So, hitting the wall was just such relief because I'm like, now I have a break. Well, I've got other swims actually for the rest of the week, but I can go out there and learn and have fun. I think the fastest swimmers are happier swimmers, like any other sport. A happy athlete, a good athlete essentially. And I didn't have any expectation because I didn't podium or do well in the other events. Now I'm like, there is no pressure. I can go out there, have fun, talk a bit of smack on interviews and have a bit of a laugh with the other athletes. So for this race in particular, it was also my first Paralympic race, Paralympic final. So that I learned a lot from, and like I said, I'm still learning, but that day was just a whirlwind of psychological warfare.
Well,
Have you watched that race many times?
Oh, well, I've watched the race because I've showed people the race, but I
wonder
haven't.
it's got so many views.
I'm probably like 60% of the views. Well, because and this is the thing, this was my final competition under Matt King, because I was looking at other clubs elsewhere because I'm finishing year 12. But we never really looked over that race as a coach and athlete because the job was done.
Yep.
Like he officially after this competition, we were both going our separate ways. So there was no real need to sort of correct that race because what we wanted, we achieved. Time was amazing. I guess the race wasn't quite there, but it didn't matter because at the games, it's not about how well you swim that race. It does for many athletes, but the end goal is to win or get a medal, right?
Yep.
So I haven't done the biomechanics to the race, but I've showed it and just been like, how cool is this?
Yeah. So we've just touched on the Olympic bronze medal. In 2022, 1 year later, you did not one but two, but in getting gold in the exact same event in Birmingham. If we can get the photo up, we don't have it up.
Get it up.
It's pressure now.
Ben, I think needs to come in here later. Oh yeah. So that's you with your gold. What were you like when you're standing on top of the podium? You obviously got another Australian second. What was your reaction when you're standing up there on the podium and you're hearing Advanced Australia Fair playing?
It's a special moment. I think the Com Games were a more enjoyable competition. I think you ask any Australian what's their favourite competition. I think 9 out of 10 athletes are going to say the Commonwealth Games. Firstly, because it's only the Commonwealth countries, so there's no Yanks, there's no Russians, there's no Italians. All these really powerhouse countries that have incredible athletes aren't there. But standing on the podium, it was very special. That's actually Alex Safi. So he's from WA. So he's also got a very similar story to me. He moved away from his mum and dad at a very young age, trains at the AIS. So him and I shared a special moment up there of just like, we did it. That kind of, like how cool is this? Let's take the next 2 minutes to just be like, how fucking cool is this? You've got a grandstand with about 5,000 Brits just going silent, and maybe about 20 or 30 Aussies just going nuts.
And then you just got the Australian national anthem.
You've got the
playing
Australian
up there, and you're with your mate Safi.
You've got 2 Australian flags dropping down and 1 British flag, and it was just awesome because I've never experienced. I've always watched and admire those athletes who stand on the podium and cry and look at the flag. Unfortunately, I didn't cry on this one. I think because there was less pressure, but it was just one of those things again because I grew up watching the Commonwealth Games and all these amazing athletes. Like some of the athletes I grew up watching were actually on that team. I knew for me that I had to just enjoy this moment because in swimming, this only happens every 4 years. And that's now 2 years ago. So I guess the mullet looks good. And so the next part for me was just, I was then thinking of, I finally get a break. I get to go home to the farm and show everyone back home that gold medal. So yeah, I can't really describe the feeling on the podium because that's sweet because you have half an hour between finishing the race and the podium. But I think that half an hour between is probably the best part because you've finished your racing for the week. You can now party and have fun and chat with the other athletes.
With the rest of the team.
Yeah, you can go and celebrate, and this just adds on to the fun. This is kind of the cherry on top of smiling in front of a camera and doing interviews and doing all the fun side of swimming, of the publicity and enjoying that moment.
And did you think that was it very close in the end between you two, or did you end up smashing it?
Depends what you call close, really, because technically he was about 0.6 of a second behind me.
Right.
But in swimming, that's about a body length and a half. So it doesn't look like it's that much because that was one of my best races ever. I was at Com Games. The training beforehand was solely for the 100 fly because at Com Games, that's the only event I had. We could solely just grind that 100 fly training. And I mean, practice the same thing over and over and over again.
Was he in any other races, Safi?
Nah, just 100 fly as well. Because it's a Commonwealth, we're very limited with the amount of events we have, just because it's fewer athletes. And as you've probably watched the Com Games, Australia destroy all the other athletes in swimming. And so, it's one of those things where you do so much training for the one event. It was perfect. And that was like the second fastest time I had. So it was about half a second between Safi and I. I'm not sure what third was, but definitely a close race because if it is it's online somewhere. But
I
you watch it,
find it, and we could have gone through it.
Yeah, well, the first
what we did with the bronze.
Well, I've seen the video. The first 50, I'm only in front by like 0.1 of a second. It's really nothing between all the athletes. But in that second 50, like I said, we've had that much time to train. I could pull away from the other athletes, breathe like control my breathing because there's less pressure. I could actually focus on my race and know what I'm good at, which was that last 25 meters.
Yeah.
Where if you guys want to watch the race later, do so. But I pull away in that last 25 meters, so half a second better body's length.
Yeah.
Did you get many actual like Olympic athletes like Kate Campbell and all that? Do you see many of them come to the Paralympic Games?
Well, firstly, I don't know, because at Tokyo was my first Paralympic Games and no one was allowed there.
Sure.
So I wish I could answer the question.
Yeah.
But
as soon as they finish, they'll probably on a plane back to Australia.
That's
or
true.
going on holidays elsewhere. So I guess maybe not going to the actual games, because when cities like Paris coming soon host games, majority of the tickets are for family, friends, but then also just the public in Paris, France, and the world.
Yep.
So I wouldn't expect many Olympic athletes to go and watch, just because I understand the pressure and the psychological just how draining the whole competition is, and to walk away from the sport for a few months to relax, I completely understand. So it'll be really exciting. Hopefully they do go and watch, but I think they'll be watching from TV and online.
Yeah, well, I remember I did watch this race. I don't, like, something just told me I just got to watch this race. Probably like in 2 years' time I'll be interviewing on a podcast with you. Something just told me to watch this race, and I remember watching it, and I was sitting there on the couch in the lounge room with my parents and my sister, and like we were watching, and we're like, go, and like it's just like kind of like it's a sign of relief, I would say. 2 Aussies up there, and then a Brit next to you in Birmingham. So it is very special, and especially from Australia.
Oh, and one thing I'll like always give Mum and Ashley, my sister I live with, credit for is it's actually way less stressful racing the race.
Yeah.
Like swimming that race is way less stressful, because sitting in a grandstand or sitting on the couch at home from TV, there's nothing you can do. Like you have to sit there and just hope for the best that I swim well. But for me, actually swimming that race, it's all on me. Like obviously there's work everyone else puts in behind the scenes, but when I'm on that block in that final on TV, it's all on me. You guys just have to sit there and watch. So I completely understand that relief as well, of just sitting there and like watching one of my fellow squad mates, William Petrick, make his first Olympic team. I knew the work he had done. Like we had done pretty much the same training, but when he swam that final in the 4 a.m. to qualify for his first Olympic Games at 19, I was like, God, sitting here and watching him swim sucks, because I can't, no matter how loud I cheer, his head's under the water. So I can't do anything. So I completely understand.
So last week, you were just up in Brisbane, qualifying for your second Paralympic Games, in which you were successful. What was that entire experience like? Because I'm not sure if Ben watched it, but I certainly watched the entire week. It just felt like all eyes were just focused on Brisbane with the swimming and that. Like you had so many achievements in that week. Obviously yourself booking a second ticket to go to Paris. You had other swimmers like Titmus that broke a world record and that. What was that entire experience in Brisbane like?
Yeah, like great. Like as you just said, I've qualified for my second Paralympic Games, which is awesome. But honestly, it sucks. Being at those competitions is so brutal, because the psychological warfare side of it just is so heavy, because a lot of the training we do as swimmers is training, 99% of it. So when we get to that 1% of racing, there's nothing else you can do in terms of prepping your body. It's all about that mental mind game of I've done the work, I can do it. So I was competing on the 11th and 12th of June. So both my events to qualify for the team were back to back, which has never really happened for me before. But once again, this is what we trained for. We prepared for it.
Yeah.
What I didn't train for was not making the team on the 11th and having one more go on the 12th of making the team. So, like, it was a great week, but if I want to go into heavy detail on how it really was a whirlwind of emotions. So my main event, as you've previously just said, 100 fly. So that was on the Tuesday. And in the heat, I was about a second and a half over the qualifying time. Yeah. Like, way off. That's probably one of the worst swims I've had in a long time for my 100 fly. So during the day, there's nothing you can do other than just rest and recover, which is fine. I know how to do that. The hard part is thinking to yourself that you can swim it faster tonight. Yep. What do you need to improve on? and struggling. And like a big one was actually sleeping during the day because you're so stressed and my heart rate was up. It was like a heartbeat of like 63 when my resting's 45.
Yeah.
So it's just little things like that were hard to overcome. So going into that final in the 100 fly was heavy. Like I felt good in the water when warming up, go to the marshalling, and I'm not talking to anyone, no music, no nothing. Anyways, and so hopping on the blocks, once again, I felt great. Like my body felt good, but I swam the time. I finished the race and the time was like 57.9, which is like 0.6 over the qualifying time, but about 1.3 seconds over my PB. So my PB was like a whole second under QT, and I bombed both. Like that was simply. I even got asked yesterday by William Petrick. He was just like, "What happened in that race, Cole?" And I was like, "I think I swam it poorly. I solely just had a crappy swim." So immediately after that race on the Tuesday night, I was not crying but in tears because that's my main event. It's what I've previously had a lot of success in. And I remember just going into the corner of the pool and just kind of like, don't cry, be professional. You've still got another swim. Because there was a lot beforehand, like, because there's so many emotions, you kind of just let that all out after the race. So my coach, Joel Fink, came over and he was just like, mate, let's just forget that swim. I'm not even going to give you feedback on that. Recover, get in the water, and we'll talk later. So that was good. He sort of, and this has said some advice elsewhere, but got in the water, recovered, just letting a few tears out now when the goggles are on so no one can see because you have to show good sportsmanship, obviously. So anyways, that night was brutal. Got out of the water, did recovery as normal, and pretty much said to Joel, I was like, dude, I don't think I can do this. And he was just like, you can. Tomorrow's day one. Let's just forget that swim ever happened. So I go back to the hotel. That was quite Uber home too. It's quite funny. So I'm obviously in an Uber with my mum and sister and a mate who's filming a documentary on my journey to Paris. So
we've got the exclusive.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to plug Dom Hawk, but that was a very quiet Uber home. It's about 35 minutes and not a single word was said. So over that night, between the Tuesday night and the Wednesday morning, was probably the worst night of sleep I had. I had a cold shower to try and refresh myself, that mental game, try and just get the whole idea of I'm not going to make the team out of my body. So I'm sleeping, and Mum had suggested, she's had her struggles with sleeping, so she was like, if you can't sleep, get up, go for a walk, and maybe take some Nurofen and see if that helps. So at about 2:30, 3 a.m., somewhere around there, I check my phone to see, I'm like, is this the next morning? Like, please be next morning so I can get up and have a coffee, etc. But it's only 2:47, and I'm like, crap, like what do I do? I'm not going to be able to fall asleep. So I get up in the hotel. We're on the 25th floor, so I just start doing laps. Around.
Just lost lights here in the studio.
Yeah, wow, even more of a build up to this story. So I
saw the lights on. I must
it's
add,
2:47. We're setting the scene.
Yeah, it really was 2:47 a.m.
It does look good with the lights on. So
yeah, well, going back. So 2:47, I'm doing laps around level 25 of the hotel for about 10 minutes. I'd pop 2 Nurophens, scull some water because I'm obviously mouth dry from all the racing, and I just knock out of sleep. About 7 o'clock, wake up. And the same thing again, I'm shortness of breath, kind of like didn't want to make any conversation, didn't even want to check my phone because the night before, Channel is the first time Channel 9 hosted the swimming. So a lot of my mates, and as you guys just said, you've been watching the swimming. So they're trying to send messages of like, hey mate, like good luck or well done, etc. So I'm like, I'm just going to turn my phone off, do not disturb, not check it all day. Anyways, moving forwards, we're getting to the pool, and it was really funny. Joel has a degree in psychology. Yeah. So he's a swimming coach, but he's also a bit of a nuthead. So he comes up to me, he's like, hey mate, welcome to the pool. It's day one. Here's the racing pool. Here's the warm-up pool. We're seated over there. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I know what he's doing. He's trying to implement in my head that it's day one. And he did an awesome job. I'll tell you what. I don't know what he had drank that morning or what was in his coffee, but he had this philosophy of it's day one, and he did a really good job of it because in that morning he essentially like helped me relax and just be like, okay, I get another 2 goes at this if I make the final. I get the heat and the final. Anyway, so moving towards the heat, same thing again. I go to the marshalling. I'm really nervous, not talking to anyone. But I changed everything I did the night before or the race before in the 100 fly. Wore a different suit, different cap, different goggle, ate a different breakfast. Oh, sorry. And rather than bringing like water to the marshalling, I brought Powerade. Like I still did the same pre-race protocols. I just changed it all up. Not because I'm superstitious, but to pretend it's day one. So swam the heat to 2 a.m. I felt great. Like, body didn't feel like I just bombed 100 fly the day before, and qualified in the heat. I was about 2 seconds under in the 2 a.m. And that was, once again, kind of similar to that Tokyo race I mentioned. It was just relief. Like, thank God.
Yeah.
Because now that pressure of, what if I don't make the team? Like, how embarrassing is this? Is gone. So for the rest of the day, I'm able to actually sleep, eat, drink, and do everything else in between as you normally would when training. It all just went to plan that second day. Going into the final, I was chattier, making jokes, laughing at jokes, etc., and dropped like 0.6 of a second in the 2 a.m., qualified for my second games, and as you said, am now ranked number 1 in that 2 a.m. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
I think a really cool learning experience, because like I said, when you ask the question of how do you deal with stress, you kind of just have to experience it. Like that 24 hours ago, I was in tears in an Uber, and then shift forward, I'm now ranked number 1, and I've got the pressure off my shoulders, and now I'm
it goes from sad tears in the Uber to happy tears in the Uber. The
It
next
goes
day.
it goes from morning to night so quickly
Yeah.
in swimming. You feel fresh in the morning and down by night. But in this, it was just such relief. There was pressure off my shoulders, and I could finally actually look on my phone and scroll and just do everything I'd normally do without feeling worthless.
Yeah.
Do you still have to recover, even like? Do you still have to do practice laps in the pool, even though you've done all like practice for Paris? Or
I mean, it depends on the person, really. Like, and obviously what coach tells you to do. But for me, I still did. Actually, before that 200 IM, I didn't have any coffee that week either.
Yeah.
So I love coffee, big coffee drinker. And when we have big sessions during training, I'll have a coffee. But for the week of trials, because I had day 2, day 3 back to back, I was like, stay right off caffeine in case I don't make the team and I struggle to sleep. Because imagine having caffeine in my body when struggling. So that night of the 2 a.m. was my last race. I just went, you know what? I poured 4 tablespoons of instant Nescafe coffee with about 500 ml of just boiling hot water and just sculled it.
Yeah.
So I was shaking after the race, not in nerves, but just from the caffeine. So I did about a kilometre after the swim to try and burn the caffeine and get my blood back in business into the muscles. And then even the next morning, because I wasn't racing that Thursday morning, I woke up at like 8:30, walked to the pool. So there was actually like the Valley Pool in Brisbane. It was about 200 metres away. So I just walked to that pool and then just did more recovery. So
so just touching on your time as a swimmer. Well, not time, that sounds like you're now retired. You're not.
Yeah, he's done 6 Paralympics.
You've done Tokyo, you've done Birmingham with the Commonwealth Games, and then, as we've already mentioned quite a few times, Paris in a couple of months' time. And we do have a photo, Ben.
Yep. Sorry.
if I'm getting trolled, I'll walk out.
No, you're not.
It sounds like you were setting me up.
So we got photos of when you were announced in the Paralympic team last week. What's it like to qualify for your second Olympics, but most importantly, to be surrounded by athletes up the top?
Yeah, it's incredible. When you're in the grandstand, so that's the Friday night of the Olympic Paralympic trials. You wouldn't expect the selection to be from a text. So you obviously swim under the qualifying time, which I knew I was on the team, but it wasn't like actually official. Like no one confirms that because it goes under selectors. Like you have to actually be selected. Like you can swim the time. There could be 20 athletes swim the time, but you still not be selected. Yeah. So I was kind of like nervously waiting in the grandstands there and got the text saying, well done, you've confirmed. Please go to the marshalling for the green T-shirt I've got on. It's special because like there's only very few athletes in that group now that are actually older than me, but also my like heroes growing up.
Yeah, I know.
So if you can see, for the guys who aren't probably watching this, there's a Paralympic athlete by the name of Brendan Hall who just qualified for his 5th Paralympic Games.
Wow.
And he was my hero as well growing up. So it's very special to be able to make teams with those guys like Brendan, who have now been to 5 Paralympic Games. He's now a dad, got a second kid on the go. But also even cooler, there are athletes in there who were asking for photos with me 3 years ago after the Tokyo Paralympics. So it's a bit weird because I'm in a group now with people I looked up to, people who look up to me. I'm kind of in that middle zone of like I'm the middle. I'm not a vet. I'm not a rookie. I'm kind of just in the middle,
You're right.
Making your way.
Yeah, kind of just making my way. But like I said, it's always a relief. Every time you hear the words like now making his 2nd Paralympic Games, Col Pearse, you're like, oh, thank God. It's like, obviously there's still a lot of work to do because the job's not done. We still have Paris. But that night I'm just like, the past like 48 hours have just sucked, and now it's like Col Pearse made his second Paralympic team, and it's just a lot of relief. But
and
also
you got a lot of cheers as well. I was watching on the tally.
Yeah,
you got a lot.
That's
of
just
cheers.
his mum and his sister yelling.
well, also
I mean,
like,
it's no surprise, but it actually it must feel good. Like you're
what can I
walking
say?
out and you hear that eruption.
I'm just popular. No, you had the Nuttawading swim group. So my training group, everyone stayed behind for that race and we're waiting for this moment. So credit to those guys because, like I said, 99% of what swimmers do is train. And so when we get that 1%, I think what the Nuttawading Swim Club's really good at is supporting one another. And as you mentioned, they went nuts. I think it was probably one of the loudest one, which is pretty cool because they do care. Like we all go through this hard 6-12 months of just like whether or not I'm good enough to make the team. And when you do have these special moments, they're there along the way and they want to, be a part of that journey.
It's like a big family, wouldn't it be?
Oh, dude, absolutely. It's like a big family that all work together on the same job. So yeah, really special. And obviously mum and my sister and friends and family who are also like in the stands. It's just so cool. But also, what really scared me was those fire, like, what do you even call those things? Like when you
pyrotechnics or
I don't know. Let's just call them like flamethrowers. When you walk out, they don't tell you that those things are going off. And like, when you go to the cricket or the footy and you can feel the heat from like 150 meters away. Dude, I'm like 5 meters away. So I was like, I crap myself.
Right on top of you as well.
Yeah, dude,
you don't know about it.
I'm convinced some of my back of my mullet was a bit crisp from it. But yeah, dude, just really cool and a big relief because the next few days I can just enjoy it, spend time with the rest of the guys and support them.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Like you got heaps of amazing athletes, and I feel like one athlete that had the story of the week was Alexa Leary, who was standing right behind you up there in that photo. Like, and the story that she had, like I heard about the story again last week during the swim qualifications, like going from what she went through a couple years ago to now what she's now been able to achieve, going to Paris for her first Paralympic Games is just, it's amazing.
Yeah, she is the sole reason I believe that Paralympians are more inspiring than Olympians.
Yeah.
Because not one Olympian will ever have to go through what Alexa Leary had to go through.
Yeah.
She was told that she'll never live, and 3 years down the track, she's now #1 in the world. She's a Paralympian, and in my eyes, I think going to win gold at the Paris Paralympics.
Yeah.
So for me, I always think that us Paralympians are inspiring because what we have to go through on a day-to-day basis is already hard enough.
Yeah.
But for her, she's an inspiring story because she was told that she won't live. So she's also incredible. She's a hard trainer. I've trained with her a few times. And to be honest, she's nearly as quick as me in freestyle. Like she's actually really...
Have you gone in the pool against her?
I haven't raced against her, but we've done so many training sessions together. And I'm also like, God, I can't let Lex beat me. So I definitely try that extra hard. I just try that little bit harder to try and beat her. But she's incredible and she's such a character.
Yeah.
Like she's exactly what a team needs. She puts a smile on everyone's faces. And even if she's having a bad day, she's not going to take that out on other people.
Yeah.
She's still making everyone laugh and congratulating them on their training session.
There always just seems to be a smile on her face. Like there were a lot of media around her last week, and it's just every time the camera is shown was like on her, and like even if she didn't know, it's always just a smile on her face.
Yeah, absolutely, and she loves music too, so she's always just dancing. Like even if there's no music, she's kind of like doing some little DJ bop and throwing her hands up in the air. And she brings good energy to the group.
Yeah. So just to conclude now, before we let you go, we asked our guests last week this question, and we want to ask you: do you have an inspirational or motivational quote for anyone? For any someone that may have faced what you faced when younger, or just in general, any young inspiring athlete out there. Do you have an inspirational quote for them?
A moment of pain can lead to a lifetime of glory.
Yep.
I think as a swimmer, to go into detail on that, a moment of pain could be that final swim in that 200 IM where it's going to hurt. Like every race as a swimmer is going to hurt. But that moment of that 2 minutes of excruciating pain can lead to a lifetime of saying, I'm a 2-time Paralympian.
Yeah.
Shifting towards Paris, I'm probably going to be just as nervous again. And I always think and reiterate that quote to myself saying, the next 2 minutes is just, it's going to hurt. It's going to suck.
Yep.
But what will come after will last me an entire lifetime. So go out there and just give it your all.
So, Cole, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And sharing your story with us on your swimming career. Congrats on going to Paris. All of Australia, myself and Ben, will be right behind your back in a couple months' time during your races.
Yeah.
So, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, boys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Good.
Yeah.
So this has been another episode of the Winning Edge Sports Podcast. I don't know what camera I'm looking at. You can listen to this episode on Spotify and YouTube at the Winning Edge Sports Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at the Winning Edge Sports Podcast. Please check out Cole. Follow his journey along as he prepares for Paris. So thank you.
Thank you.